Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm bringing you along today as we prepare to dehydrate the onions that we pulled from the garden. I pulled about 6 pounds of onions. I have already cut both ends off of the onion and taken the outer layer off. Washed these really well. What I'm going to go ahead and do with the 6 pounds of onions is chop them up so I can have like minced onion when it's dry. Last year I did do slices. I would cut the onion in half and do slices like you would use in like a fajita or other recipes that just take slivers of onions. You can cut these up into rings. Really, you can cut them however you are going to use them. Okay, so we have the onions all minced up. I have ran them through the strainer just to get any kind of excess juice or liquid off of them. The next step is to get them on trays. Now, in the Excalibur food dehydrator, you have the trays, but this is just mesh. And while I don't think the onions will go through it, I don't want to take a chance of, as they dry, they're going to shrink up and possibly falling through. So what I'm going to do is line the trays with parchment paper and then spread out the onions as evenly as possible on the trays. Okay, I've got the trays full. I ended up only filling 7 out of the 9 trays. So I've got the top one empty and the bottom one empty. And the rest have all the onions on it. You can see all the moisture in there right now from the onions sweating a little bit. But the key to dehydrating evenly is to get the onions spread out as evenly as possible. And if I was doing this during the day, I would dehydrate it a few hours maybe, and then I'd come through and I'd kind of stir and break it up. Since I'm doing it over the night, we're just gonna let it run and I'll break it up and chop it up into smaller pieces once it's dry. So for right now, I'm gonna let this sit. We've got just a few more hours before I will get this started. It is in the evening time. I'm purposely doing that because the weather that we have, it is very hot and humid right now. I'm going to dehydrate them overnight. The humidity level will be the lowest at that point, which is a big factor because I am going to be dehydrating these out on the porch. You can do it in the house, but just beware, it is going to be very potent and very strong. Okay, so it's a little bit later in the evening. I've got the dehydrator outside. Now the Excalibur dehydrator that I have does not have the digital dials or readings on the top, it's the knob. So I'm going to bring you in, show you what we're going to set it as and how long, and we're going to let this go for the night. Okay, so for the particular model that I have, it does show you your list of items and the temperature to dehydrate them at. Now if you look in the book for the Excalibur dehydrator, it calls for onions to be dried at 145 degrees. So we've got it set at 145, and it says between 4 to 8 hours. I'm going to go ahead and get it started for 8 hours. So it has 2-hour time intervals. So I went ahead and set it at the 8, and that's all we're going to do for tonight. Check back in the morning. Hey everybody, okay, so it is the next morning. The dehydrator ran throughout the night, ended up running for the full 8 hours. And I'm going to show you what we're left with. Okay, so I don't know if you can recall last night what it looked like, but here's our end result. They're crispy, dried, and they break apart very easily for the minced onions, which is what we were going for. So I'm going to get these off of the trays into the bowl just to kind of show you before and after, and then I'm going to get these stored up for the year. It's kind of hard to tell, but last night the onions, once they were minced up in the food processor, the level was about up here. So they've shrunk down probably about half their size, if not more, which, like I said, I always get fascinated by that for some reason. And this is our final product. 6 pounds of onions fit into a quart mason jar. It is full all the way to the top. I'm going to go ahead and put an oxygen absorber inside the mason jar just for protective measures and to help with the shelf life. And then this will sit in the cabinet ready to use. Besides using minced onion in recipes, one of my other top ways to use minced onion is whenever I make my French onion soup mix. And we made a video on that several months back. I'll go ahead and link it down below. But dehydrating is a great way to preserve your produce, even fruit. You can freeze onions. I used to do the same thing before I had a dehydrator. But I also know that I'm gonna have some corn coming in, and I do prefer to freeze my corn. So to free up freezer space, I will try to dehydrate what I can. Onions, peppers, you can even dehydrate your vegetables, and then whenever you want to use them in a soup or however you cook them, you can just rehydrate those. But dehydrating them is a great way to save on freezer space and still store things and have a long shelf life with it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're new or interested in gardening, canning, preserving, we got a late start to planting our garden, so we're going to have a little bit later of a harvest, but I will be bringing along whenever we do all that. We'll have corn, we'll have green beans, we will have the carrots, and hopefully some sweet potatoes if those produce. And we've got several tomato plants, so of course I'll be doing salsa, various sauces, and I've got several tips and tricks for you when it comes to the tomatoes that I have learned throughout the past several years. One of them was experimented with last year. It worked out great, and I've been trying to tell everybody about it. But it would be a whole lot easier in a video. So make sure to look out for the tomato harvest and the tips and tricks that I have when working and processing tomatoes. Until the next time, we will catch you later, and happy gardening.